Good day, my fellow Americans and good people of the world. Today I would like to address you in regards to a concept that I believe is not getting quite enough attention in today's political atmosphere. There's a lot of different reasons for this. Mostly what I believe it comes down to is avoidance. I believe that there's a lot of reasons why uh, the political climate has yet to um, be acclimated to by the political parties because of the overarching need for survival. And by touching on kind of like the hot button topics, they can kind of skirt their way around not having to talk about the things that are actually consequential in terms of where we are and the inevitability of where we're going if we continue on the same or similar course that we have been on for quite some time. And then also the potential, shifts where we might end up trying to lead ourselves to go to, depending on which administration comes into office in the next term, and where we would end up being in consequences for those that administration's decision making and um, thinking around certain key core issues that are needing to be brought under advisement right now in America so that we can get ourselves back on track and lead forward in a direction that will not only be able to create a restoration of integrities for our nation, but also to give us a sense of stability and domestic order to settle ourselves in a better situation than what we find ourselves in the socio-techno-economic cultural um, paradigm that interrelates in between each and every one of us and permeates our day-to-day lives and is, conducted in this like political drama on the stage where, mainstream media tries to bring it to our attention that these are the things that are going on and this is what the political heads think about it. This is where they're, taking action, and this is where they're falling short on, follow through or in, actually achieving what they say they were, sort of thing. And it's not that we don't need to talk about these things. That conversation, that dialogue is crucial. It's important. We need to have that so that we understand where we are, where we've been, and most importantly, where we're going. But in America, we really need to focus on unforgetting the past and reimagining the future. And we need to also put ourselves in a position where we are consciously aware of where we are and what we might be able to do with what we got right now to put us in a better foot forward. The topic that I'd like to address today, which I believe is not being addressed in the proper manner, is the economy. And for me, the concept is really simple when you put it into the basic terms and conditions of the prosperity of a nation. It comes down to the capacity for the administration of governance that is to guide and direct the inner workings of a nation and those interwoven, interrelated organizations that help to create coalitions and build coalitions and organizations amongst people so that we can be productive. Productivity is ultimately the reason why we have economy. We have economy so that we can be productive, and we're productive because we need to be innovative. We need to be technologically advanced. We need to give ourselves the capacity to be peacefully evolving and we need to give ourselves the capacity to involve ourselves with one another, create cohesive bonds of cultural identity, national identity, personal identity, and to share that in a socialized way, and to make sure that we are giving one another the necessary service and products and lifestyle convenience products and services that help us to provide for our daily living, the bare necessities of life, but also to make sure that we have the abundance of choices in terms of actual products and services that will enhance and enrich our lives, and opportunities to choose from whom we're going to get those products and services, so that we can make sure that the moralistic integrities that are our soul print alignments within ourselves are aligned with the ethical standards by which these companies intentionally adhere to in order to make themselves more appealing, more receptive to the consumer base, in terms of feeling that not only are you purchasing a product or paying for a service, but you are involving yourself intentionally with a larger than yourself um, action, an activation of a certain sort of organization that says we're going to tap into this a uh, limitless potential of a proper capitalism in a free market society to bring forth in the world the type of productivity that we need in order to enhance our lives and continue our prosperity, secure our blessings, and to secure our well-being, protect ourselves, and to provide for our happiness and the resource commons that are necessary to be able to establish life. And these larger corporations and organizations and small businesses work together as uh, um, groups that formulate value, compact value, in efficiency forms, and so the consumer is involved in this beautiful relationship with the companies who help to produce these products and services, but in such a way that is in alignment with integrities, so that we can stand by our decisions in the fullest measure, to know that you're not just making a choice because it's a way to make a quick buck or save a penny or two, but rather that it is in the full alignment of your soul's interest to involve yourself in this way. Like, you need to have this product, you need to have this service in most cases in order to live out, your pursuit of happiness, in order to survive at a standard level of thriving, so that your life is engaged with vitality, and so that you are consistently in a state of well-being, and in your life is well faring, and you're able to steward your life, steward your home, steward your family, you steward your children as they are grown up and raised to be, happy, healthy, vibrant children who are, conscious and civically involved and engaged and kind and welcoming and practicing constant good humanity, all of those things that parents should reflect if they ever intend for their children to be those things themselves. But we need help in that process to achieve those sorts of things. And the best way to do that is through our economization of our practicalities and the combinations and these unique fun forms of human ingenuity manifest in the form of some tangibility that not only improves the quality of our lives, but also helps us to fulfill that sense within ourselves of, this is who I am, this is what I'm here for, this is what I'm about. These are the type of experiences I want to have, in the catalog of the universe and in its pick your own adventure game. This is what I want to achieve. This is what I want to experience. This is what I want to be involved with. This is what I want to possess with ownerships that I can care for, maintain, and respect and appreciate for that ownership. And that it in turn enhances my life, improves my life, creates efficiencies in my life, helps me to save and to build up a generational wealth that with accumulating effect helps me to be able to live out the best version of my life without going into excess. So we're living within this sense of comfortable conservation and resource commons and enhanced human ingenuity expressed in every form that is possible, where we can be responsibly productive in terms of you can be productive doing things, but are they really giving you the outcome results that you intend? And so our economy is really about outcome engineering the type of future that we want to see, the type of future that we want to live in. And so we should be encouraging as many forms of companies as is possible that can to give their own, zest for approach to provide these offerings and service and production, and to give different, backstories, like the whole concept of branding, how tremendously important it is, because your brand represents not only, this is my product, this is my service, but like, this is who we are as a company and what we represent. This is how we value and honor and respect our employees, because they are a vital, crucial part of the cohesive mechanism that helps us to mechanize this service or this product, so that we can provide it as an offering to the consumer base that can then take on that as a form of enrichment in their life in exchange for a different form of enrichment that they give to the company. And in that purchasing power then empowers the company to, um, pay for their continued service, create more products, and to continue on being a productive company, and to pay their fair share of taxes to make sure that the entire system of the nation that is upholding their capacity to involve in this economy, they are giving into that the supports necessary to maintain, sustain, to stabilize, to reinforce, to constantly adhere new forms of resilience that are adaptable, malleable, mobile, efficient, that help us to face the oncoming challenges ahead that we may not know exactly what they're going to look like, but we know that we have to be prepared for, all cases of, extremes, and work within what we got to be able to make sure that we give ourselves the best chance to make it through whatever it might be that is to come. So, in terms of the economy, what's super important in terms of the government side of things is for the government to give a national directive to our economy. Our economy is missing that key component. We need to have a directive for our economy that isn't just about, you know, produce and earn money so we can increase our GDP. That is as pointless as a piece of paper in relationship to a decimal point. These are not genuine values. They're just things that we use to represent. But when you peel all that back and you look at the value, what we're really talking about is outcomes. And so engineering those outcomes, what sort of outcomes do we want? Well, we have to have a directive in order to achieve outcomes. It's kind of like, you cannot arrive anywhere utilizing a map unless you know where you are, when you are, who you are as the traveler, and then where your destination is. So we need to have a government that gives that type of directive to our economy, so that then companies can take on that directive as part of their analysis in terms of how they're going to pursue business in an effective way, so that they can create profit and create great products and services for the consumer, so that they can continue to stay in business because their company and their brand and their offerings are desirable, and that the consumer base not only sees this as a necessity of their life, but it's also important to them on so many different personally, dynamically aligned values that make them want to choose to get this product or service from that particular company, because it is reinforcing their sense of like how they want the world around them to um, be structured and reinforced so that they can involve themselves with it in a sense that they belong, and that it's safe space for them to belong and be true to who they are, live out their personal truth, and not feel like that they have to make a choice of compromising between their internal values, their soul values, and making a purchase of something that they need in order to sustain the quality of their life, but it be from a company whose alignments, brand alignments, are um, so far removed from the alignments of the individual that it actually goes against everything they believe in, so they can't in good conscience make that decision without burdening themselves with a sense of guilt for doing so. Consumers really consciously or subconsciously have that type of in involvement, and marketers try to make people build relationships with brands. So it's not far-fetched to say that people build relationships with brands based off of, sound reasoning, off of their own personal beliefs and whatnot. So the government needs to give us a type of structured order, a direction by which companies can align with, that can also achieve the ultimate goal of creating an alignment with our nation, to help us to stabilize, to help us to unify in such a way that causes us to involve with one another, without the pretenses of, innate biases or prior and past conditionings, or faulty belief systems, or faith in some sort of, uh, entity beyond, anybody's measure, that is to say that somehow that's going to make everything work in alignment. We need to have something that's tangible for us to, touch base with in a common sense, so that we can all say, yes, for sure, at least that is a grain of truth, and there's a groove to it, and there's a ledge by which we can all follow. And if we can follow that edge and continue to build off of it, we can start to bring structure to the order of the universe by which we all are involved in. And so, our economy is about liberty. And that liberty is our liberty to choose, our liberty to involve, our liberty to make sound decisions based off of truth and reality and facts, and to involve ourselves with the emotionally intelligent decision making in terms of like who we're going to involve with, why we're going to involve with them, and what sort of things that we really need in terms of our life involvement that's actually going to enhance and enrich our lives. But those, and the personal level, the people need to make those decisions, but the government needs to give us this overarching kind of like everything comes under this baseline fundamental terms and conditions that our economy is going to work on. And that directive, that sense of direction, helps us to map our own way to be able to get there. Whether you're a company who's building up industries or markets, so that you can have offerings in the proper capitalism, free market society, or if you're a consumer who is in need or seeking for something and wanting to find it in a reliable and trustworthy merchant within the economy. So, but the government not only needs to give that directive, they also need to have the basis of a proper budget. A proper budget will cover all of our necessary expenses as a nation. It's expensive to, build infrastructure and maintain it at safety standards and quality standards. It takes money to make sure that we have the proper education system, to make sure we have a informed population of people who are able to become active participants and contributors to society, not just in the economic sense, but also in the civic, in the cultural, in the communicative sense. And broadening our horizons by getting people to learn the basics and then give them the capacity to explore, an exploratory type of education so that they can imagine what sort of things that we haven't discovered, new cures or new innovative ways and approaches, fascinating new technologies that are yet to come. We need to give people that basis of understanding and a mutual baseline intelligence that we can all accord with, so we all understand, this is how it is. These are the physics of the universe. They don't change. um, and when we have a universal truth, you can build off of that as a solid foundation, and amazing things have and will continue to spawn from that. But that's why we need to get as many people involved in a proper education as is possible. So we need a proper economy, we need a proper education, we need proper infrastructure, we need proper innovation, and we need to be able to do this in a sustainable way. We need innovation, education, infrastructure, and sustainable development of all of those things with an overarching directive of where we're trying to get ourselves to go. So all those things can come into alignment in terms of we're gearing ourselves up, preparing for the future that is to come, and making sure that we're ready. And, in case of whatever might befall us, and then be always ever aware of opportunities that we can make advances on that will bring us into an ever advanced state of civilization, an ever advanced state of human species, ever advanced state of humanity itself, and evolve together consciously and intentionally in a certain way. And for me, like, we really need to think about this in terms of government, because of the fact that most people in the general sense look to government as sort of a guide, sort of a reasonable voice that tells them, not what to do, what to think, what to feel, but tells them that these are the things that we are all co-creating together. This is how we've accomplished these things over time. This is what we've achieved so far. These are the goals we have set out for ourselves for, the next year, the next 3 years, the next 5 years, the next 10, the next 20, 100 years. These are the things that we're trying to achieve. And these are the problems we're trying to eradicate. And, the mountain, you know, of issues we're trying to whittle down as much as we can so that they're more manageable and maintainable. Government's supposed to give us that sense of, this is, the action, you are the agent, this is the objective, overall mission, proceed within these limits and bounds of regulation and appropriateness, and to involve as many people as possible in the, productivity, in the participation and contribution of consumerism in an economy, or participation in education and these sorts of things, to discover what new horizons lie ahead from us as we continue on in our process of co-evolutionary development. And so the government's supposed to give us that directive, that sense of where we're going. And to me, the most important thing that we could take on is a sense of stewardship. I believe America's best chance for success is to become a nation of stewards, where we steward our own personal lives, our families, our homes, and then together co-steward our neighborhoods and our communities, in our states, in our regions, and our entire nation, and then become stewards of an international community of like-minded stewards who are all co-creating stewardship for the planet Earth, our, spaceship Earth, the one place that we all belong to, and to be as, responsible together for making sure we achieve stewardship safely, peacefully, and resiliently, so that we can continue this beautiful, lovely story of humanity that we've so far been blessed with. Even with the highs and the lows, humanity is quite the remarkable story. And I really want to see it continue, but in the most successful way possible. And I think that America has a unique golden door of opportunity that we can advance to the rest of the world in terms of becoming stewards and really taking that on with intention to use that as our cause for uniting to something that is bigger than ourselves, that can help us to cast out these differences that have kept us in constant bickering, conflict, fighting, warring, and just tearing apart, the fabric of our entire species, because of the fact that we have so many differences. We haven't been able to align and agree on anything with real purpose and intention that not only is like, this is reasonable, right, fair, and just, but also at the same time, like, this is something that is inventive, and it's, exploratory, and it's an adventure, and it's something that is worth involving yourself in because it's fun. And I really think that we have a chance to be able to do that. It doesn't always just have to be dark and doom and gloom and, fixing one problem after another. Life has to be about positive, fun involvement with things too. And I really think that giving us the directive of becoming stewards is a way to do that. Because once we get under wraps a pace and a tempo in terms of like accomplishing like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, getting ourselves back into alignment with planetary boundaries, which are all parts of stewardship, we can also steward ourselves in terms of like, what type of fun new adventure experiences do we want to have as humans, and advance in those ways, but knowing we're doing it not at the cost of any populations of people, or, destroying planet Earth and in order to advance to another planet. Because these sorts of things you can't do in good conscience. You have to make sure that what you're doing is safely, peacefully, and resiliently done. So, but we have potential, and we have opportunities to do these things, but actualizing that potential really takes a game plan, and the government should be providing that game plan to us so we can all involve. And once we do that, the infighting is going to start to cease and fall away, because we're going to have to work with one another in order to achieve our common goals. And our common goals, being something that's so overarching, is much bigger than ourselves and much bigger than our petty infighting. And we no longer are investing our time, effort, and energy in wasteful outlets that don't really get us anywhere where we would want to or need to go. And then also leave us in these crazy predicaments where we're ill prepared to face the problems that are ahead of us. Take what happened during the pandemic and, 2020, the whole COVID thing. We were not prepared for that at all. And look where it left us, which comes to my next point. Like, one of the things that really like spawned my, energetic drive to come and make this video was this concept that's been mulling over in the back of my head for, actually a couple weeks now, but really came into the fore here a little bit ago. But it's the concept of why we have such a tremendous amount of deficit, which is, if your spending is more than what you're intaking, you have a deficit. It's a simple equation. But why do we have that? The problem is that we had a massive amount of stimulus into the economy of non-productive incomes. And people used that to be able to purchase things. And because there wasn't productivity going into the manifestation of those dollars just came out of nowhere and were invested into the economy, it increased the demand but shrunk the supply and did nothing to replenish the supply in the meantime. And so costs naturally went up. And then once we were able to stabilize, the system back into a sense of normalcy, where it's like not everybody's in massive mad demand for toilet paper or something like that, some of the costs began to balance out and self-regulate, but some of those numbers stayed high because companies realized, yes, people will pay this higher price for things, and because they will, we're not going to lower our price because, there's nothing saying that we have to. And people will continue to pay. Why? Because you need your toilet paper. So because of that, and then the back end of, like, once people started going back to work, incomes did not rise to the occasion to meet the demands of the now inflated prices. We have a huge, it's a gap and then a huge height difference between where people have to try to take what they got to get them to what they need. And there's so many shortcomings. There's no way to bridge that gap without more influx of, some sort of subsidy from an outside source. But again, that ends up being free money. That has nothing to do with productivity. And so that lack of productivity, increasing that, is just going to drive this number up even more because of the supply demand, deficit. That's not the only mechanism, but that's one of the main mechanisms that I've been thinking about in terms of we need to change that dynamic. We need to mechanize something different in order to compensate for that, in order to help us create an achievement of regulation. And the best way to do that is to increase our productivity. But because we can't increase that productivity without incurring the cost of having to pay more wages, which will keep us constantly in that, we need more productivity, we need more wages, but then the cost of everything goes up. It'll keep that constantly going, and the cost of things are going to continue to rise. There's no real way to get that number down. You might be able to put a temporary cap on it, but that's not a sustainable solution. You have to change the dynamic of productivity and incomes. And the best way to do that is to increase our productivity without increasing incomes. But listen, hear me out. I know it sounds bad. It's like, I'm not trying to get people to work for free. But what I'm suggesting is that we as a nation faced a pandemic, and we all got a response from the government of support to get us through that difficult time. Well, now as a nation, we are stuck in this difficult time, and it is affecting everybody across the board. There is not a single person in America that is not touched by the dynamics of the economy just disintegrating the cohesiveness of our economy, our nation, and our sense of domestic order. Things are out of control. It's leading people to become desperate in their ways, seeking criminalities, or being so desperate that they are forced into these cycles of poverty and dependence on the government for welfare. And these are not sustainable solutions. However, if we all accept the truth and reality that we need to be able to increase our productivity to make up for all this free money that we got, we can bring ourselves back into a sense of order. We can increase the amount of productivity that is in society, therefore increasing the amount of access to services and products that consumers can get. So this number of the inflated prices, which is based off of too few units, higher demand, can come down because we have an increase of units, but the demand is not going to change. We're all going to still want and have the same exact demand for it because our incomes have not increased for us to increase our amount of demand. So that's going to bring that number naturally down. And so when that number comes down, as the productivity goes up and the incomes stay where they are, then we're achieving a sense of equilibrium. And then it's something that we can gradually bring ourselves into a state of balancing it out. And balancing that out is going to take us then, after this influx of productivity, a increase in our wages. But the increase in wages is not going to be based off of compensating for the increase in productivity. Is going to be, from now on, regular base pay is going to have to increase. We're going to have to make our minimum wage higher than what it is, and we're going to have to create an incentive package that provides kind of like the extra perks that a large corporation provides to their employees, extra perks for people to be involved in the economy. Regular everyday people, the government should be providing an incentive package to small businesses to provide for their employees so that they are willing to go and work. Because if you work, look at all these great perks and benefits that you get. So it incentivizes you to work. The more people it works, the greater that we get in a tax base, the greater tax base we get. And, we're not paying out subsidies anymore. So that number for our deficit can start to go down. We can pay down some of this freaking interest and eventually get to the point where hopefully we can stop be a debtor society, and we can stop, trying to make a nation function off of debt, because that's just not sustainable. We need to be able to bring those numbers down, and we can, but it's going to require everybody to get involved. The more people we can get productive and working, the more that it's going to increase our tax base, and the more we're going to be able to compensate for the increase of productivity, so it doesn't become we're producing more than what we need, and then we have an overabundance, and that surplus ends up getting sold for a cheaper price, and then the companies suffer for having to sell their stuff cheaper because they can't hold on to it because it costs them money for every day they have to hold on to it. So we have to create another balance in there by increasing the amount of wages that the people get. But you have to do this in the right timing. You have to do it in the right way. You have to do it for the right reasons, and you have to do it in an efficient manner. And the beginning stages of this is to increase that productivity by requiring all persons who received any sort of COVID stimulus from the government to be required to involve themselves with volunteer work within their communities under government approved locations that they can involve themselves in, so that they can create a productivity in society, to pay back for what they were given. And the reason why is because we need to make sure that people understand there is no free rides. And we also need to make sure that people don't become too comfortable in the sense of the dependency that we all had to involve ourselves in during the COVID pandemic out of necessity. But we need to make sure that people understand that that care is only there for temporary emergencies. It can't be a sustainable thing all of the time, because we don't have the means to do that. Our economy doesn't work in such a way where we can just have free handouts to everybody all the time. You need to give some sort of participation and contribution to society in order to, pay your way. And it doesn't necessarily have to be where you have a job and you have income and you pay taxes. It could also be that you volunteer. But that's where the productivity gain is going to come from, is having the government predetermine certain industries, certain organizations that have been pre-approved by the government that can accept volunteer work from people who have received COVID stimulus before, to pay back what they took from the government in order to get them through that hardship, that hard time. And for that to be not in excess to the point where they can't continue to work their regular jobs, but enough that it's not going to take them forever to be able to pay that back. We want to be able to create a short timeline in which this gets done and involve everybody in the process, give people many different options for involving in these sorts of things, but making sure that that productivity isn't just for useless things that we don't actually need. It should be a type of productivity that we need in order to get us ahead and get us above and beyond where we are right now in terms of increasing our supply chains on down places where we actually need to increase the type of productivity. So the biggest thing in terms of that is, if we are taking the overarching goal of achieving stewardship, we need to start increasing our productivity for creating sustainable energy solutions. We need to be able to increase our productivity in terms of sustainable farming solutions. We need to increase our productivity of taking care of our cities, making them more livable, beautification for our cities. So, I mean, the options abound in terms of what we can do, but it could be in terms of volunteering in your local community to do street cleanups. It can be volunteering at the food bank to make sure that people are getting, the food that they need that's necessary. And then the catch here is that nobody gets to opt out. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter how little money you make. Everybody has to be involved, with very, very few exceptions in terms of the, extremely weak and feeble, the excessively elderly, and the different abled people who are in a sense of disabled from being able to participate. And so other than those extreme circumstances, everybody has to participate. But even in that, I mean, you can have people go to a library and read to a group of kids. That would be a way that you can involve. And although that's not productivity in the sense of like you're building a tangibility, or you're, in society that can be sold for something, but you're providing a service to your community that's going to help to enrich the community, because it's not just about dollars and cents, guys. It's about creating a livability in a city and creating value in terms of our life experiences and finding ways to involve one another. And if we all are on that same page, we all received COVID, supplements in subsidies somehow, and we all have to pay it back. And we all get to choose only from these options within our local area to do that. That's going to bring us together in a way that COVID was able to bring us together from, across the screen of distance. But this, in a way, it says, I'm giving back to my nation, to help my nation to recover from this, because we still haven't fully recovered from COVID. And we need to be able to come together in a sense of like, we're doing this because it's, fair, just, reasonable, and right that we all do this. And we're going to replenish our coffers in terms of adding value to our nation, in the ways that are tangible and intangible. We'll be able to heal rifts in our society, in our communities, if we're all, put in a position where we have to come together to work together to accomplish these certain things. There's many different ways to approach this. There's many different value generating opportunities that can be created. Again, it should only be certain types of organizations that are allowed to do this, because we want to make sure that companies aren't, profiting from free labor, because we don't have slavery in our nation. But the idea that we want to make sure that there's involvement with these organizations that are going to be able to do value increases in our society, increase that productivity, that then can help us to be able to balance out the cost of living, the wages for a living wage, and then the productivity that helps us to generate the flow of transactional economization of how we work, why we work, and what we do, so that we can all get ourselves to kind of a state of equilibrium. In my mind, it's not about making sure everybody has the same thing. It's not about making sure everybody has the same outcome. It's about making sure that everybody has the opportunity to get to where they need to be in order to live a life of fulfillment, a life of vitality, that they're thriving, that they are not struggling to the point where they are incapacitated. They're still challenged, because that challenge is part of the driving mechanism that keeps us going, but they are not overburdened to the point where they end up becoming so self-defeated that they are not able to achieve. And this will inspire people to try new things, like involve in different types of, community, opportunities to be able to give back, right, for all that we received in this time. And in doing that, the government then can, put a value on this productivity that we're gaining from this volunteer work. And that value is what we look at in terms of, okay, the outcome that is achieved is the value that we're gaining off of this. And that outcome that we've achieved helps us to be able to justify the point when we're like, okay, now we're at a state where we've achieved enough productivity that it's we've been fully compensated for everything that we had to give as a subsidy during this time. And then let's shift the gears a little. Once we get to that point, we're like, okay, we know how to do this. We know how to bring ourselves into a state of equilibrium. We have to create a mechanism within society that can help us to create an empowerment when, stuff hits the fan again in the future with another potential pandemic or something to such an extensive degree that it halts our sense of normalcy in life. This is why we need to establish an auxiliary economy that can run parallel to the existing economy. that can help us to make sure that if people, fall into hard times, that we can shift the mode into that auxiliary economy where they will still be able to sustain and maintain a way of life, but they will be um, held accountable to what they produced within the auxiliary economy. Once we're shifted out of the emergency mode, they're going to have to pay that back over time, to be able to replenish the coffers of the auxiliary economy, which is just there kind of like our nest egg safety, net to get us through these really hard times. And that way we can shift, productivity and consumption and our financing of things into the auxiliary economy that doesn't affect our regular economy to the point where it completely defaults the system into disintegration. We need to have something that we can fall back on, and an auxiliary economy that runs parallel to the legacy economy will achieve that ends. And that could very well be, if done properly, and with an extreme adherence to ethics, could potentially be achieved through accessing a Bitcoin network. Um, it reminds me of the concept of one of my favorite Christmas movies. I love Christmas, but the Christmas movie is Jack Frost, and this animated version where the city that these people live in, they're all very poor, but come wintertime, once the Jack Frost comes and the ice comes, they create coins out of the ice and they use that to spend amongst themselves, so they're all enriched within the community and they can transact with one another despite not having gold or money or whatever, because the lord of the land stole it all. So, but the point is that there's a way to have something that is, maybe not the legacy economy, but an auxiliary one that can get us through hard times. And we can continue to build that system as, times are good, so that we have a heightened amount of value in that, and a capacity for that to be so efficient and applicable where it needs to be in what industries, whether it's housing or food or medical supplies, these sorts of things. In the middle of emergency, it can tap into those sources and people can still run off of it, and then the value that is generated there over time then can be used, and then the debt, so to speak, that has occurred during like an emergency using that auxiliary economy can then be frozen, and then they go back into the regular legacy economy and eventually over time pay back into that system to replenish the coffers there. And by giving ourselves this, there's more details to that, a much better explanation and an actual like project proposal how to approach that, but this is just kind of like the doggerel sum up of it right now to get it to explain it. But it's basically giving us a system to manage our incomes and our expenses in a way that's not so complex, but helps us to be able to simplify the process, especially in the middle of an emergency. Um, Especially because in emergencies we can get easily overwhelmed about everything that's going on, and then just lose our minds about like sensical things in terms of, a person goes to the store and buys out all the toilet paper, leaving it for nobody else. Nobody else has what they need because you were way too greedy and took more than you needed. So, you need to have a built-in system in this auxiliary system that says comfortable conservation has to be involved in that. You have to, there's limits to everything, and, there's enough for man's need, but not for enough for man's greed. So you need to be able to have a system that can help us to manage that and control that spending and how we handle things, and transform our, economy into something that is a not necessarily compulsive, but complementing of our traditional economy system, so that we can build up a different type of wealth, a wealth that's based off of outcomes. I always like to think of it in terms of the energy unit. Energy unit is based off of the outcomes, is the compounding effects of energy achieving something. Excuse me. So from there, like, whoever leads our nation, their beliefs about money is going to affect the um, directives of our economy. And when you look at the way that they consider money, um, you can think in terms of more than likely outcomes are going to kind of go in the similar direction as what they think. And if they don't think in terms of how much it costs the day-to-day living of the individual, you know, regular everyday average family, if they've never had that experience, they're going to be too far out of touch to understand what it's going to take within the economy to make the economy work for those people. If you're only thinking about how to make the economy work for billionaires, you are so completely out of touch with the average American who has to figure out every single day how to pay their groceries, how to buy toilet paper, how to make sure they have paper towels, how to pay for cleaning supplies, how to make sure they can do laundry, how to make sure they can pay their water bills so they can take a shower and brush their teeth and drink water and cook and clean and all of the, natural everyday things, and make sure they have power to be able to make sure that water is actually going to be hot, and make sure they have light and electricity in their house and they can charge their electronics, and you know uh, make sure that their kids are able to have a computer and internet so they can do their homework and all of these things. There's everyday concerns and the budgets that families have to take on. If you're thinking about what the billionaire class is needing the economy to do to supplement and benefit them and their desires and aspirations, you are not directing towards the average American. The average American are the ones that need to be empowered in order for us to be able to create an abundance that is overflowing, that benefits everybody. The concept of the trickle down economics is so bass backwards, because billionaires ultimately are just like hoarders and Scrooges, when it comes to making sure that we have a system of social, welfaring for people. They don't think that people deserve help. They should just do it on their own when society has everything rigged against them to be able to do that. So we need to be able to make sure that, the economy is like a business, and we have a business plan to be able to fulfill the needs of all Americans, not just a few, but understanding that if you help the people who have less in order to access opportunities that give them more advantages that they can build on, then it will raise the standard of capacity to economize, which then makes more businesses have more consumer base to appeal to, which means that we have a greater abundance and increase in our economy. But if you don't have the balancing act that I was talking about earlier, then you're going to have this gross inequality that ends up making it so that so many Americans just can't afford the bare necessities of life. And then so many billionaires can afford another yacht and another plane and, more trips to outer space and all of these things, which are not great, nice luxuries. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a world and a society that allows for people to have these wonderful, beautiful, extravagant things. But I don't believe that it is right, reasonable, just, fair for them to be able to access to get those sorts of things at the cost of the everyday people, and that the continuing subsidizing of that lifestyle, but not giving an equal subsidy to the people who are struggling to, barely make ends meet. So there's a difference between the way you look at money and how you understand needs and how you understand wants, and how expenses are dealt with on an everyday basis by the average American, and how expenses are dealt with, with billionaires that have, family estates that are dealt with all these financial advisors that deal with that kind of stuff for them. But right now in America, the occasion calls for us to be thoughtful and be prepared, and to change the course and improve the condition of our society, and to do so in such a way where we're better prepared to take on a reasonable budget, and to heal ourselves from the unfortunate havoc that was, wreaked on the American economy during the COVID pandemic. I will not say that it was a bad thing that we gave subsidies. It was absolutely the right thing to do, because emergency hit and we got to give people something. But the aftermath is the problem. And until we consciously decide to clean up that mess, it will continuously be this echoing, persistent problem that's going to fester, and it's going to increase our financial obligations to interest and debts that we will never be able to get ourselves ahead of the game. We need to be able to start understanding how our nation can afford to be a nation. We need to have stability in our economy, and that means that we have to make some significant adjustments to our tax system. We have to make significant adjustments to our income system, and significant adjustments in our productivity system. And we need to make a significant adjustment in terms of the limitations and bounds of regulation for companies, so that companies don't become too excessive in their pricing of things that outprice everybody from the system. So there's a lot of factors in terms of especially making sure that companies are not expecting, like in the case of food stamps, often is a subsidy for PepsiCo, because people will buy a bunch of junk food with their food stamps. And not to say people shouldn't be able to have those things, but that should really be going towards something we know is actually nutritionally sustenance for, giving people the nutritional value that they actually need in order to fuel their lives, sorts of things. And we need to make sure that we're not putting incentives in the wrong places that are being exploited by companies who are all about the almighty dollar, and less about, the overall health, well-being of the American people and America as a nation, because that's taking advantage of these weaknesses and these vulnerabilities and exploiting it to their own personal benefit. And that is a lot of the reason why we have problems in America, because of those sorts of things. And we should have a tax base that makes it impossible for somebody over a certain income to have a zero tax base. And we should give people opportunities to choose a portion of where their taxes go to. A portion of their tax, they should be able to choose where it goes to, towards certain types of projects already predetermined by the government, to say, these are the areas you can choose to invest in. And that will help us to get the things done that American people actually want to get done. And so we'll feel like we're involved in the process, and that we're actually being productive in terms of our taxes going towards what we really need. And then creating efficiencies in the system in terms of not, fire everybody and call that efficiency, but rather understanding the areas in which we have overlapping work that can be condensed down to a more simple process by a smaller group of people that can achieve the same outcomes, with a greater support system, of a supportive team to help them to get that done, breaking up everything into smaller jobs, but working as one cohesive team to get it done, and then limiting the amount of people that are the actual decision makers in terms of like the directive of where, a certain project is going to go or whatever. And again, that project tying into the overarching objective and goal of achieving stewardship in our nation. So I really believe that that's the opportunity that awaits us in terms of improving our economy. There's a few more things about it. But again, we all have different starting points, but we have to understand our starting point and our intention, our intended ending point, in order for us to read the map before us and get ourselves there. And we need to be able to continue to build up our economy without incurring more debt. So we need to make sure that whatever policies that we put forward in terms of, incentivizing our economy to grow and expand in certain types of ways, we need to make sure we're doing that in a responsible way, so we're not incurring more debt and creating, more complexities for our lives in the future, where we find ourselves with less people willing to work because, it's almost like you're working to pay taxes and then die. And, you don't feel like you're actually doing this thing together we call, economization, so that we can achieve a specific ends. But, it's not just about what we get today, but also that brighter future that we're building together, and where we are going together, and what it's going to take to get there. And to understand, we're all standing by each other and working towards these things. And here in this point in time, we have a unique privilege and duty to be able to bring forth whatever we can to make sounder economic decisions for our nation and for our people. And with that, there's tremendously more to talk about it, but I'm sure I will have to pick another day to continue that conversation.